all of a sudden, through the back of the store, through the back door, comes that fucking same guy that came through the restaurant. And I watched him, and he walked right up to the counter and went behind the counter with the clerk, and he put his arm around him, and he pulled out a radio and said something into it and pulled the employee down behind the counter. And all of a sudden, both fucking doors just fucking burst open, man. I shit you not, motherfucking explode. SWAT team. Motherfuckers rushing in with fucking M16s, shotguns, and they were screaming, hit the floor, grab some linoleum, motherfuckers. And they were fucking serious. This was the FB fucking I, right?
Oh,
Yeah, fuck yeah, it was. And U.S. Marshals, there about must have been 40 of these motherfuckers there. And we were freaking the fuck out. We had no idea what was going on whatsoever. We had no clue what was going on. And so I hadn't been out of prison very long, right? So, like, I'm running my mouth. I got my cheek on the floor, and I'm looking over, and I can see my partner across from me, and he's got a SWAT team boot on the back of his neck, and they got a shotgun up to his head, and they're still screaming at us to not move and all this stuff. They were freaking out, man, and freaking us out because we didn't know what was going on. So Willie's hollering, shut the fuck up to me. You know, we'd been friends for like 13 years. We were like Wrigley's and Spearmint, baby. Best bros, man, for almost, well, about 13 years. So anyway, he's telling me shut the fuck up. And so I'm like, fuck that, man. I want to know what the fuck is going on. And so they got us up, all handcuffed. But right before they picked us up off the ground, through the front door came a photographer, like he was doing like a Van Halen fucking guitar skid, like running, and he got down his knees and slid into the room. I shit you not, man. Dramatic as fuck. And he had this big camera and he was taking pictures of everybody. So then they take us outside and we're going towards the, like where I just walked across the street towards the restaurant, but on the left side, not the right side. So as they're taking us all out one at a time, when I come out the door, what do I see? I see the whole fucking, all the intersections been blocked off with road barriers, you know, the old school ones, the wooden ones with the orange stripes. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And they had 4 cop cars lined up. So as they're taking us to the cars, I hollered at Willie and the other 2 idiots. I said, don't say nothing, because I didn't know what was going on. I started, keep your mouth shut. Remember, I hadn't been out of prison very long. I was still in the prison mode, man. And as we're going around the front of the cop car that was for me, it was right up against the curb at the intersection in front of the right, just about maybe 10, 15 feet from the barrier they had set up. And everybody that had been at the restaurant was standing in front of that barrier, a whole crowd of people, right? And so as I'm going around in front of his car and I'm handcuffed and the cops perp walking me around in front of the car, I just let out a big fucking roar. I just let fucking loose, man, with a maniac wailing, you know? And the whole fucking crowd went all at once, man, and they all leaned back and shit. And I'm thinking, man, that guy's he's gonna fuck me up for doing that and shit. And he didn't do anything. He just put me in the car, and then he took all 4 of us to the police department. And when we got there, we found out why that all happened. And what had happened was Beetle Bailey, that owned the 61 Chevy Impala that I was caretaking for him, he thought that the 3 of them took that car. So the whole time we were gone on the road down there, which like from Lawrence, man, it's a couple hundred miles, right? We figured it's about a 4-hour drive. And so he told his doctor that the 3 guys, he didn't know I was going. That was another thing. So I don't know, when we showed up there, the cops must have been flipping out, because instead of 3 guys, there's 4 guys. So they had to be thinking I must have been the mastermind behind the whole thing, right? But Beetle Bailey had told his doctor that they were going to rob grain elevators and pawn shops to get guns, rob grain elevators for money, and go to the bank in Arkansas City and rob the bank. But this guy's a fucking wingnut. And the doctor believed him. So they called the fucking police and the FBI. And all night long that we were all in the early hour mornings from about 2 to 6, we were on the road. But they were everywhere looking for a beige 61 Chevy. But we was in a fire engine red Pontiac Le Mans. So um, that's why they were looking for us, and that's why they burst down the door. And if they, being that they thought that we were heavily armed mental patients, military vets, Vietnam era people, that we were heavily armed to the teeth and was going to rob the bank. But then, them guys just go get the money out and didn't do anything. So that blew that whole deal. They had to be thinking, well, what the fuck is going on? So we get into the Radio Shack. They break down on us, take us to the little jail thing, interrogated us for 3 hours. And so then eventually they took me back to the car and made me open the trunk so they could see in there. There was nothing there. One of the guys still had about 4 joints on him. They took those. And then after 3 hours and stuff, they let us go with these words: "If I was you, I wouldn't be stopping at any banks on your way back to Topeka, Kansas."
Yeah.
Shit you not. Scared the shit out. Here's a funny kicker part. Maybe about maybe 7, 8 years ago, maybe even 9, I had a student driver on my truck. He was a former truck driver, and we ended up getting a load assignment. Guess where? Arkansas City, Kansas, bro. And a little tiny, almost like a doghouse of a little cafe on the corner. So when we got all squared away, we went over there to get something to eat. And when we got up to the counter, I asked the gal behind the counter, I says, how long have you lived around here? And she said, oh, about 5 years. I said, oh, well, then you wouldn't know. She goes, what? And I said, about the bank robbery and the big bank robbery that happened in Arkansas City back in the day, in I think about '86. And she goes, no, I wouldn't know anything about that. And so I turned around after I'd ordered and paid for my food, and there was only one. There was 4 or 5 tables, but only one person sitting there, and there's a guy reading a newspaper. As I started walking away from the counter, he lowered his newspaper, and he said, I heard about that. He said, my grandma told me that story. He said, and she told me that those guys got away on bicycles. I said, no, that's not true. And I just went ahead and invited myself and sat down. I said, but because I know that because I was one of those guys and I sat down and I told him the story I just told you. The end.